In this tutorial, we're going to make a blackjack simulator in Python. First, we're just going to import random because that will be used for deciding what card to take out of the deck whenever we deal it to the dealer and to the player. So let's make our suits, and these will just equal all of the different suits we have in a regular deck of cards, which would be hearts, diamonds, and now I just need every value of every card and the numerical value of what that is. So for example, ace will equal 11 because that's what it usually is. And of course later on we can make it so that if you have too many points, then aces will go back down to 1. But for now, aces just equal 11. And we'll name this values. And it's going to equal a dictionary this time because it's taking in two values, the key, which is ace, and the value, which is 11 here. Alright, now we're done with the most tedious part of this process. Now we can make our classes. So the first class we're going to make is going to be the actual card object class, and it's going to have some very simple properties. We're going to have an initialization, and make sure to define this. And it needs to be self, name, and value. So the name will be the suit, and the value will be the value. Let's actually change this to suit just so that it's more simple. Now we can say self.suit equals suit, self.value equals, and now what we're going to do is we're going to say values, and then we'll take in value as a key. So basically, if we set this value equal to ace, then it's going to go to values, and it's going to check where is ace. Oh, well, it's here. Then we're going to return 11, because that's what the key value pair is. It's ace and 11. So this is going to actually make self.value equal to 11. But we can still use this value for a description. So if we say self.description equals f string, and we make that value, and we'd say ace of hearts, for example. So it'd be value of suits. Luckily, this already has an S, so we don't have to say suits. We just need to say suit, and that's it. We're done. So let's just make a card object, and let's just print it off and see what it looks like. First, before I print it off, though, I'm going to make a display function for this. And it'll be really, really simple. It'll just be, we'll take in our self, and we're going to print self.description. But maybe we want a little bit of extra specialness. So instead of just saying self.description, I'm also going to put a dash here and a space. And now we can make our card object. Let's say it's an ace. And let's say that the suit is spades. If we take this and we say that the variable name is card, and it equals card object, and then we say card.display. Let's press F5 to run this. Boom, it says dash ace of spades. Perfect. That's exactly what we wanted here. And now, instead of making it manually like this, maybe what we want to do is we want to make a whole deck. So let's make a new class, and let's call this group cards. And this is going to have a very simple initialization. All we need in here is to say self.cards equals, and then we'll input cards here. But by default, realistically, we're probably going to start out with like nothing. So let's make it just by default equal a blank string. And then we can say init deck. So we could have just like a hand in here if we wanted to, or we could make an actual deck with this. So we'll pass in our self, and realistically, and in a normal deck, we're only ever going to have 52 cards, so we don't really need to actually pass anything into here. We're just going to say for suit in suits. So that's going to loop through this list and go through hearts, diamonds, etc. And then we'll say for value in values.keys. And what that's going to do is it's going to take all of these. So it's going to take ace, 2, 3, all the way up to king. And it's going to leave out all of these stuff, all the keys, really. And then we will be able to actually see this will equal 52 cards, each one with a suit and a value. So we can say new card equals, and just like we did it here, instead of spades, we'll put the suit, which is set right here. Instead of ace, we'll put the value. Awesome, so we don't need this card anymore. So I'll just delete that. Now, maybe we just want to display the new card. So let's just do that. New card.display. That's all we'll do for now. Let's make a new card group. And then we can initialize that card group by saying card group.initDeck. Now let's press F5. And now it's got every single possible card that is in a deck. That's awesome. Really simple. And now let's make another function, and it's just going to be for moving the cards around. So we'll say deal. So we're going to take in self, and then we're going to take in deal 2. So whenever we want to deal some cards from the deck, we'll just say, like, for example, deck.deal, and then whatever card we want to put it into. So player hand, for example. So we'll deal from the deck into the player hand. We'll deal to the player hand. So let's just make this function. Basically, all we need to do for here is say self.cards. Oh, and also make sure to say the amount of cards that we're dealing. So self.cards, and we'll say a random choice from that cards. So random.choice. And that'll just equal one random card. So we'll say random card equals random.choice self.cards. Okay. And we'll say for I in range amount. And that's just going to loop through amount here. And let's say we say 2, then it's just going to do this twice. Perfect. And then it'll say self.cards.remove random card. So we don't have this card anymore. We're dealing it away from us, and now we're dealing it to deal 2. So we can say deal 2 dot cards dot append random card. Perfect. And right here, make sure that we're appending self.cards.append the new card. And I'm going to get rid of this display just because we don't need to be seeing it every single time we make a deck. So let's make another card group. And this card group is going to be equal to player hand. And of course, this time we're not going to initialize it as a deck. It'll just be a card group. Card group, because that is our deck here, dot deal, and we're going to deal to the player hand, and let's just say it's 2. And then let's make a function in here that just really easily shows off all of the cards in that group. So we'll just put in self, and then we'll just say for card in self.cards. So it'll just loop through every card, and then it'll do card.display. Awesome. So now that we have something in the player hand, let's make sure that we actually do have something in the player hand. So player hand.display. Now let's press F5 here. Oh, and also make sure that this self.cards is not actually a variable. Just make that default here. And we can just remove this. Now let's press F5. And we'll just get the 7 of clubs because I said 1 here. If I delete this, and I just make this a 2, press F5, we've got a jack of hearts and a 10 of hearts. And if we press F5 again, totally different cards. Now this should be good for just the cards. Let's move all of these over. So it's going to throw us a little bit of errors because we need to actually import cards. So let's do that, import cards. And you're just going to use whatever name you have as your file name for your cards. So for me, that's cards. And then I'll just say cards.groupcards and cards.groupcards. And it'll do everything I want. If I press F5, it'll display 2 cards randomly. Perfect. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this to equal the deck. And then I'm going to make the dealer hand. So dealer hand equals cards dot group cards. And then I'm going to do deck dot deal dealer hand 2. And then I'll display the dealer hand as well. So let's try this out. Python file. And we've got that. Jack of hearts, king of hearts, ace of clubs, 4 of clubs. Now for the dealer, we actually want to only display one of the cards, and the other one will be hidden. So in display here, let's make another one, and let's say amount, and let's make amount equal to 52. So by default, it'll just show the entire deck if it has to. And in here, I'll make amount minus equal to 1. So every time we show a card, this amount will go down by 1. And then if, let's say this is equal to 1, right? Because we're only showing one of the dealer's cards. So if this amount is less than or equal to 0, so if it was 1 and now we displayed one of the cards and now it's 0, then we break out of this. So we don't show any cards anymore. So I'm just going to put this back to 52. And if I go back to dealer hand, I'm just going to display one of the cards. But we still want to show the other cards in some sort of way. So maybe instead of breaking it, let's say that we put this here. But now we want to check if it's just less than 0. And instead of breaking it, we will say print question mark. So instead of saying the actual card, we'll just say that it's a question mark. We don't actually know what it is. And now, otherwise, if it's actually proper, then we'll display the card. Perfect. So let's go over here, and now let's press F5. Now we've got a king of diamonds, 5 of spades, 3 of hearts, and then a question mark because we don't know what the dealer has. Let's go over here again, and let's make this that whenever we display something, we will say /n, so that makes a new line. We will say owner hand. And we can just put the owner right over here. So let's say owner equals player by default. So whenever we make a dealer, we want to say that it's actually the dealer, not the player. So over here, let's just say dealer and then 1. Go right here and make this an F string so that it actually shows the owner. Now let's try that again. So player hand and dealer hand. Perfect. So now the player will have all the information they need to decide whether they want to hit or stand. Like in this situation, the player would probably want to hit. Now let's put all of this inside of a start function. And we don't need to worry about that for a little bit. So let's just close out of it. So I'll just press this so we can close. And we have start all dealt with. Let's now do some of the things that the player will actually be doing. So one of them will be hit. And for hit, all we're going to take in is the hand. So if the player is hitting, then we do the player hand. And if the dealer is hitting, then we do the dealer hand. Then another thing we're going to want to do, let's just pass this for now, is we're going to want to say the player decision. So we want to ask the player, what are you going to do? And then depending on what they decide to do something with it. So let's pass that as well. We also want the AI decision. So the dealer decision, and that one's just going to be, we're going to need a max, which is equal to 17 in blackjack. For the dealer, they just check if their value is greater than or equal to 17, then they stand, and otherwise they just hit until they get to 17. And we'll pass on that as well. And then at the very top, we're going to take in a evaluate. And this is a very important function because it tells us what is the actual value of a hand. So we'll take in the hand, and what we'll return is, and I'll just hash this out because we're not actually going to return it yet, we're going to return a boolean for if they've lost, and then we're going to turn the actual value that they have. And so we just need a max value here, which is in blackjack equal to 21, which is totally different than this. This max means that you've lost the game, while this is just what the dealer is deciding to do. So if we made this 15, it would just change the dealer's decisions. But this makes it so that if we change this, you'd lose or win depending on what the max is. So in evaluate, let's actually do this first because it's really important. For card in hand.cards. So we're just looking through every single one of the cards. We're going to say value plus equals card.value. Very simple. And all we're going to have to do is at the very back here, we'll say value equals 0. So that once we go over here, then we'll be adding it to 0. Now, once we're done this loop and deciding the actual value, we're going to want to say if value is greater than or equal to max, or just greater than, I mean. If value is greater than max, then we're going to want to go through all of this again, saying value equals 0. But this time, we're going to check if value is equal to 21, then value plus equals 1. And then otherwise, it's just going to equal the card value. So this is just making sure that if there's any like aces in here, then they're going to actually equal 1 rather than 11. Oh, and this is not going to be 21, this is just going to be 11. Now finally, we're going to return if they lost, and that just means that we're returning if value is greater than max. So that's one boolean here. And then the actual value that they get. Now the problem with this is that if you had 2 aces, it would return 2 and not 12, which is not ideal. So instead of saying value equals 0, what we're going to do is we're just going to take this, and we're going to go through all the cards, and we're going to say if value is equal to 11, then we're going to minus equal it. And then after that, we're going to check if value is still greater than max, and we'll keep going. So we need to do if value is less than or equal to max, then break. Awesome. So this is going to work if we have 2 aces. It'll just give us 20, or it'll give us 12 rather than 2. So I'm going to get rid of this hashtag here. I will make sure that this value here is also card.value. Let's collapse the evaluation. So we're all done with that. Now we've got hit, player decision, and dealer decision. In player decision, we're going to say decision equals input, and we'll ask the player, are you going to hit or stand? Now in hit, we want to make sure to display at the very end. And before that, we'll say deck. And the thing is that now deck is in this start function, and we don't really want that. So let's make these global. So we'll be accessing the global here by saying global deck, global player hand, and global dealer hand. And then at the very top, we will say player hand equals none, dealer hand equals none, and deck equals none. So as long as we're making sure to call start first, then all of these other functions will work. And now as you can see, deck is colored in because we have an instance of it right over here. So we'll say deck.deal, and we're dealing to the hand, and we're just going to deal 1. we're going to take this hand.display, and after that, we're going to return whether or not they have hit the max or not yet. So we'll say evaluate hand 0. And that will just get this first thing, which is values greater than max, which is just a boolean for whether they lost or not. So if they did lose, then this will return true. And if they didn't lose, then it'll return false. Awesome. So in this decision here, let's say if decision is equal to hit, then we'll do hit player hand. Now this is going to equal whether they lost or not. So we'll say def lose or win. So let's make the end function, so it's just the end of the game, and we'll say who won, so it'll be winner. And by default, let's just make winner equal to player, for example. It doesn't really matter. And now if hit player hand, this is just going to check, well, has the person lost? Then and the winner is going to equal dealer. And so we'll say here print /n, so that's a new line because this is pretty important. Winner was, let's make sure to make this an F string, winner. So if it was the winner that was the dealer because the player actually lost here, then it'll say that it was the dealer. Otherwise, we're just going to keep going. Oh, and make sure to return here because we don't want to actually keep going after that. If decision is equal to hand, or actually instead of return, let's say break. So while true, because we want this to go on forever, if the decision is equal to hit and the player loses because of that hit, then it gets out of the while true. And now we're going to say if decision equals stand, then if hit dealer hand, so the dealer hand, actually we're going to say if dealer decision, then this is going to return if the dealer lost or won. And if they lost, then it'll give us a true here. And so we'll say the player wins. And then we'll break out of this here. And now this dealer decision needs to basically do what the player decision did, but in a different way, because it needs to say if dealer hand, we're going to evaluate it. So evaluate dealer hand. And we're going to take the first value here, which is 1. Or actually, we're going to evaluate the dealer hand for the max that the dealer has. And now if it returns a true, then that means that it's greater than the max. So that means that the dealer wants to stand. So then we'll say print dealer stands. Else, so if the dealer does have some more stuff to do, then we'll do hit dealer hand. And of course, we're going to return false because the dealer didn't just lose here if the dealer is able to stand. And now, in this case, when the dealer hits, then we will return whether that hit loses or not. And we'll print dealer hits. Now, after we're done all of our decisions here, let's put this hit or stand inside of the while true. So the player can decide whether to hit or stand multiple times. And we're going to say player hand.display after every single time that we go through this player decision. Now in the dealer decision, at the very end, we are going to get back to here, dealer decision, and right over here, let's say that the decision is equal to stand and the dealer decision went through, but it didn't actually end in the dealer losing. And if that happened, then we're going to say dealer hand.display. And here, we're going to return. So we're going to go all the way back to where we said the player decision. So really, player decision is what we need to do whenever we do start. So right over here, let's say player decision. Oh, and make sure to say start at the very bottom. Awesome. So it says the player hand and it says the dealer hand. 8 of clubs, 8 of hearts, 6 of clubs. Hit or stand. So we have 16. I don't know. I'll hit. Winner was dealer. Yeah, because the player hand literally got to 28 here. So that makes sense. Oh, it's kind of important. Just make sure to put a square bracket here and a square bracket here, because otherwise it doesn't really understand what this means. And actually what I'm going to do here is instead of returning whether the dealer hand wins here, I'll just say to hit it. And then at the very end, I'm going to return the evaluation of the dealer hand, 0 here. Now, when we hit the dealer hand, we're going to say while this max here, and we're going to say while it's not true, we're going to hit. So it's going to just hit until it finally hits the max, and then it'll stop. Now there's only 2 more things we need to do here. One is we need to go back up here, and I need to change this value to 10 because 1 is not actually the right value here. And then the other is we have to go down to stand, to when the player makes his decision to stand here. And if the dealer hand doesn't instantly bust, then it doesn't actually return anything. I'm going to return a true here, as in the computer needs to actually make sure that this is doing its job. So we'll say if player decision, so it needs to make sure that it's actually doing it. We're going to evaluate. So if dealer hand, and we're going to evaluate that. If evaluate dealer hand 1, and we're going to check if that's less than. So if evaluate dealer hand 1 is less than evaluate player hand 1, then that means that the player won. So we'll end with the player winning. Otherwise, the dealer won because the dealer wins as long as there's a tie or as long as they have more than the player and nobody busted. So that's what this is really doing. This is checking if someone busted, then we're not going to do this because we already ended it. But if they didn't bust, then we're doing this. And now up here in return true, we want to actually go to the very bottom of this while loop, because if we broke it, then that means that actually one of us already busted, and we'll say return false. Now let's press F5 and see how this goes. So we've got the queen of spades and queen of clubs, so I have a 20, pretty sure I don't need to hit. Boom, player hand, player hand. Okay, so there's a little bit of a bug here where it's saying that the dealer is actually the player hand. Yeah, hand.display. So we just need to make sure that this is actually displaying the right thing. So we'll say owner, and we'll make the owner equal to player, so we don't actually have to change anything in the player thing. But we'll just say owner here. And then we can go down to the dealer decision. And whenever we say hit, we just say dealer hand. So we don't actually need this display here. So let's just delete that, because we already have the display in the hit function. So we don't need to worry about displaying it afterwards. So let's press F5 on this again. And now it'll only display the player hand once. So let's just do a hit here. And see that we got the player hand, 2 of hearts, 4 of spades, king of clubs. And that's 16. I think I'll stand on that. And now the dealer got a 7, a jack, and a 6. And that means that they busted here. They got 22. So that means that the player was the winner. Awesome. And now all we have to do to make it so that we just play this forever is we just say while true at the very bottom. Start. Thanks for watching.